Welcome to the SPEAKPact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Rose, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the SpeakPact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Rose.
Welcome back to SpeakPact. We are thrilled that you are here with us. Today, I have a Hall of Fame keynote speaker. His focus is tremendously important for speakers who are on the rise in the areas of relationship building, of referral, getting those referrals for that next great speaking engagement, and all the things. We have Bob Burg with us. He is the co-author of the international bestseller Go Giver, and he is co-founder of the Go Giver Success Vault. For over 30 years, Bob Burg has been helping entrepreneurs and sales professionals build relationships, communicate their value, and accelerate their business growth. Although for years he was best known for his sales classic, Endless Referrals. If you haven't read it. It's his business parable, The Go Giver, that he co-authored with John David Mann that has created a worldwide movement. And I'm super excited to get into that. Bob, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Antoniette. It's great to be with you.
You as well. And, you know, the act of giving serves so many purposes, especially when we really just give to give versus give to get. So can you dive into what led you on this path? And you are a sought-after speaker with a huge following. Kind of share with us your journey from great idea to where you are now.
Well, very briefly, I began in broadcasting first as a radio sportscaster, then a television news guy. Wasn't particularly good at it, and graduated into sales. Really studied sales and began to study personal development. And after a while, things started to click. Eventually, I worked my way up to sales manager of another company years later, and from there started to share with others what was working for me based on all the things that I had learned from so many others, and have been very fortunate to be in the speaking industry or profession, whatever you want to call it, for about 35 years now. And as far as the idea for the Go Giver, it started back with my first book, Endless Referrals, which you were kind enough to mention back in its first edition in the mid-90s. And it was really a book for, it was a how-to book for salespeople and entrepreneurs who knew they had a great product or service. They knew it brought a lot of value to people, but they didn't necessarily feel comfortable or confident in terms of building the kinds of relationships with people in their community that would cause people to want to do business with them directly and or refer them to others. So it was really, Endless Referrals was my system of how to develop those know, like, and trust relationships that would inspire that kind of word of mouth business. But I'd always loved reading parables since I'd been in sales, starting with Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World, to The Richest Man in Babylon, to then, you had Spencer Johnson and Ken Blanchard's 1 Minute series. Now, of course, there's so many people who write great parables that I always enjoy. But so I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could take the basic premise of Endless Referrals, which was, and this is sort of, I guess, if there's one saying I've somewhat been known for over the years, it's that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. If we could take the basic premise and turn it into a parable. The challenge is, while I can tell a story from stage, they're true stories. That's different from writing a parable, which by nature, although it's always based on principles, it's a story. It's a fictional story. And I knew that was not in my strength zone. Fortunately, I met John David Mann, who was editor-in-chief of a magazine I was writing a monthly column for. This was back in the early 2000s. And John, even back then, had a fantastic, wonderful reputation. Turned out to be a great guy, very high character. And I thought, oh man, this guy could work wonders with this. And I asked John if he would be interested in taking a look at this. And fortunately, he said yes. And we wrote the parable, though when I say we did, really, it was John's magnificent writing that made this thing sing, and finished that probably in 3 months. However, it was after going through 24 rejections over the next year from New York publishing houses that finally the 25th one, Portfolio, an imprint of Penguin Random House, finally said yes. And they've been a wonderful publishing partner to work with, and now we've had a few books as offshoots of the series, and it's been a fun journey.
That's really interesting because you had endless referrals, so you had the track record already. But I love that you brought in the whole concept of tenacity. You could have given up on try 10 and just thought nobody wants this, I'm going to go a different direction. You guys tried, you kept at it. And I think that's a really good lesson for speakers and authors alike.
Oh yeah. The speaking business, it's a business like anything else. And that, which means it's sales. It's selling your speaking engagement. Now, if you come in to and I know you work with a lot of professionals, people who are already very, very successful, and now they want to speak. And, if you're a celebrity, yeah, it's probably not going to be a real difficult thing. But if you're a mortal like the rest of us, right, it doesn't matter how good you did, how well you did in business, or how good you did in business, or gooder you did in business. It's a business like anything else, which means you have to have a system for the business, for the sales aspect, for the delivery aspect. The easiest part is the speech. The most difficult thing is getting the gig in the first place. And it does take a lot of tenacity. And you're going to, like any sales, you're going to get a lot of no's before you get the yes. But that's part of it. And as long as you understand that, as long as you go in understanding that, it's going to be okay. I think like any kind of sales, and the same with people who want to be professional speakers, it's not the no's that stop them. It's thinking they're the only ones getting all the no's that stops them.
I love that you made that distinction, because you don't become a Hall of Fame speaker waiting for someone else to build your business for you. You've got to put in the elbow grease right alongside, and you have to have that tenacity. Quick little side note. I recently brought on kind of an emerging voice. And one of their complaints was that their assistant, we always work with their assistant as well as them, had to, leave 10 voicemails that week. I'm like, great. That's actually a really good, but they were looking at it as a negative. It's actually the way it goes, right? That's
for 15, 20, 25.
Yes. Yeah. Amen. And so even after you've reached the heights that you've reached as a speaker and the notoriety through the work that you do and the go-giver work that you do, and you have a huge following, do you still find that if you want a certain number of engagements every single month and you want to know you can count on that in your calendar today and 6 months from now, do you still do some outbound outreach, or do you ever get to the point where you just can kind of sit back and it all comes to you?
Well, so I'm 67 years old now. I'm not retired, but I'm not traveling anymore to speak. So I'm not getting on airplanes. Okay. Yeah. So I kind of the last couple of years stopped doing that. And, I for, I guess, 35 years, I've been speaking, whatever it is. And I've been honored to have this profession and be able to make a living doing it. But I never liked the travel. Not even when travel was
and
fun.
now it's more fun than ever, right?
So,
but let's say in your last 10 years, you'd really
go ahead. No, right, but just an answer to your question. Yeah, when I was still, wanting to do X amount of engagements a year, sure, I did lots of outbound and got lots of no's. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they just weren't, it wasn't a fit. Sometimes they'd already had their speaker. Sometimes they wanted another speaker. Sometimes my fee was just too high. A lot of times it was. So yeah, that's just how it is. I don't know if you've ever heard of my friends, Andrea, Wallace and Richard Fenton. They wrote the book called Go for No. And the subtitle is it's a business parable, like The Go-Giver. Their subtitle is "Yes is the destination, no is how you get there."
Ooh, love it.
Yeah,
Yep.
they just came up with a follow up to that just a couple of weeks ago. But their book is it sold over 1 million copies. It's been a big, because really anyone who has succeeded in any kind of sales understands that. But no is still yucky, right? To use a technical term. And so what they do in that book is they really help reframe the idea, the concept of no.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean we want to get the no's. Don't get me wrong. Again, yes is the destination, but it's understanding that no is how you get there. So if you can actually see the no's as a positive, if I get X number of no's, and that's again assuming you're doing things the right way.
Mm-hmm.
If I get X number of no's, I'm going to get a yes. Okay. So what if I make a goal not to get the yes? What if my goal is to get X number of no's? Well, and I thought they did a brilliant job. Plus, they wrapped it in a fantastic story. So I really think it's coming to grips with that's part of the business.
Right. And I love that you brought that up, because I think especially when you're in those upper levels, when you're 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, when you're getting those kinds of rates, the competition gets bigger and the opportunities get smaller, because that kind of budget, not every engagement's going to have. So that just means the conversion rates go down. And so the number of outreach and touch points need to go up.
Sure.
And I love that you mentioned once you embrace no, then you can look at it as a positive, because that's just
Right.
one step closer to your yes. You don't
Yes.
need many yeses when you're at that level. Right. So
Yeah.
very, very good.
The old saying is you got to fill a 5-gallon barrel of no's in order to get that quart of yeses. But the quart of yeses is what makes the career.
Makes it all. Yeah, that's what makes the career. Ooh, such good stuff. Okay, so early on, I'm assuming you got this concept of relationship building and asking for the referrals. Can you give us some tactical on that for a speaker? So what are some of the ways that you found are kind of the best inroads to start building those important relationships? And did you have a certain methodology behind asking for referrals, or kind of walk us down that road?
Yeah. Well, so when I started speaking, I started out with one niche, and I would work all the state organizations, and I would go through them, and the whole idea was to make the calls, find the interest, qualify them, and of course, if they were a qualified prospect, now you'd send through the mail, right, all the information sheets and the clumsy VHS tape and all those different things, and then you keep going. Of course, when I wrote the first book, Endless Referrals, that I wrote that really as a positioning tool, not as not for any other reason. And so you'd get an engagement, and then the idea was to leverage that engagement, do a great job, and then ask for the referral. Okay. And, typically the way I ask for referrals is just like I would counsel anybody in sales to ask for the referrals is to kind of lead in with a bridge phrase such as, Dave, is more and more of my business is now through referrals and introductions from my clients or through more and more of my business is now through referrals and introductions. I find it's helpful to partner with my friends and clients such as you. Can we take a few quick minutes and run past the names of some other people I might also be able to help? Now, in this case, I'd say some of your colleagues in the other state associations I might be able to help. Okay. So first, what I'm doing there is getting the buy-in.
Yeah.
Instead of just going right out and asking, I'm first getting the buy-in. So again, as more and more of my business is now through referrals and introductions, I find it's helpful to partner with my clients and friends such as you. And then the key line here is, can we take a few quick minutes and run past the names of some, and again, I would say some of your colleagues in the other state associations who I might be able to help. And I say might because I always want to give that out or back door so that they feel confident that when I call, I'm not going to come on too strong and that I'm and so forth. So you always want to give the out or back door. Now, if they say, well, yeah, we did a great job for us, that would be fine. So now I'm going to So in this case, I might ask for, certain states that maybe I had contacted so and so. I'd say, do you know, Martha Sprzinski at the, Association of blah, 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 blah in
Oh, so you do some
Pennsylvania?
homework. Yep.
Right. Yeah, oh, sure. And then if they do, why, I had contacted her about 6 months ago. I'm wondering if, whatever. So again, that would just depend upon um, what your goal is and how you would want to meet that. If you haven't met those other people, you want to try to get them to think of specific people who, and so instead of just saying maybe some of your colleagues and other, it might, who are some of the colleagues in the other state associations who you are particularly close to or good friends with. Okay, because now instead of them having to go through a whole thing where they can't identify someone, now they're thinking, oh, well, I'm really good friends with Joe Johnson and Martha, Harris and blah, 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 blah. I sat next to them at the last, whatever. And so now they can, and then I might just say something like, if you'd feel comfortable doing so, would you? And then I would ask for the introduction.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. Okay. And I really appreciate your humbleness that you started off locally and with associations, right? There is a sector of speakers, especially newer ones, not always, who they don't want associations because generally they don't have the bigger budgets. Sometimes they do, but generally they don't have the bigger budgets, and it might feel like too low hanging of fruit. But I always look at the audience, like who's going to be in that audience that's going to give me those higher paid engagements. And associations are incredibly powerful in that way. So how did you go from associations to maybe corporations or conferences? And what was your favorite?
So my goal was always to go when I'd work a horizontal market like a state association, whether it was an independent insurance agents or realtors or whatever it happened to be at the time when I was first starting. So I picked like 3 niches and I would work those, and I do it horizontally. But my goal was twofold. The first was to get to the national level, to be asked to speak. Okay. So the first time I would speak at a national convention, it was probably a breakout session. Okay. And then the ultimate goal was to do their keynote, their general session. But remember, who attends association meetings? People with companies, right? And if they're at these conventions, they're probably someone who's pretty involved with their company. So you're getting yourself in front of the right people that way.
Right.
Again, do it for a fee. You start out with whatever your fee is. You're the expert, and you can help them with that, and so forth. But I'll go one step further because I love what you said about the association level, which is usually the state level. Do the local ones too. Do the local ones for free if that's it, because you want to get the introduction to the state, right? And then from the state, but don't do the state for free. Now you're charging a certain fee and so forth. But let me suggest this: do 100 free talks at every Rotary, Kiwanis, Business Professional, Women's Associate, in your hometown, in your county, and do as many of them as you can for free, 20, 25, because what you're going to do is you're really going to get your rap down. You are going to nail exactly what you talk about. And that's where you want to do it. It's also, you're going to find you have certain laugh lines. And so, something you just kind of came up with and they laugh and say, okay, I might have something there. So use it the next time. See if it gets the same laugh or if there was something. This is where you can, and you're doing it for free. So there's no pressure. And this is where you're going to have, this is where you're going to start to get a little bit better every single time. Now, you can also, if you have a coaching service, you can also at the very end of that 20 minutes before you give your signature story, which you should end with a signature story, not with a sales commercial, but the little commercial can be, I'm often asked if I do one-on-one and small group coaching. I do. I take on a limited number of clients. If you'd be interested in discussing such, and then what you do is you don't say, here's my card, because you don't want they're not going to do anything with it. You say, take out your card. Okay. And write on the back of it, coaching or something like that. And then come bring it up to me before you leave. And either myself or someone from my office will call you to have a fact finding discussion.
Ooh, because that's really that's real motivation, right? No,
Yeah,
I
and
definitely want Bob Burg. I'm going to take out my card, write my note, and bring it up there.
right, and then they're bringing it there, right? And then what you want to do is then end with your signature story. Okay, so you don't end with the sale. Do your sale, and make it quick, brief, powerful, just like that. Um, and then have a signature story that you end. And this is a great time to practice that signature story, because it's always going to be the same one, whether you're speaking for free at a Kiwanis or whether you're speaking in front of 15,000 people at the National Association of Widget Dealers. And the more times you share that story, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. So it's all great practice.
Okay, so call of action, you deliver the content. So there's intro, deliver the content, and then do the call to action and end with that memorable signature story.
Memorable, uplifting signatures. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. And I also really appreciate your humility, right? To do quote unquote free talks. But if you do it right, tell me if you agree with this or if you have further notes on this. I still always invoice. Let's say you're a $10,000 speaker. I would still invoice at the $10,000 and then line items, some of the things that were agreed to. They'll introduce you, if you knock their socks off like you will, they'll introduce you to 3 of their colleagues. I don't know, maybe give you a book signing, whatever it might be. And then I come down to 0 or to their budget. But number one, I want to implant that you are an elevated speaker, right? So your keynote material, but then I also really want to build in that law of reciprocity, because then they're all too happy to enthusiastically introduce you, because you just delivered at a high level, came down to their budget or even free.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that's always a great idea. You always want to put value to it. Now, my feeling was always, if it was a civic group or club, they weren't paying anybody anyway, and you kind of knew that was just a sort of thing. However, you bring up a really important point. You do need to realize that to the degree they pay you, that's the degree they're going to treat you. And so don't be surprised, but make sure you're real humble when you go there, because you're not going to have any kind of special treatment if that's what you want or whatever. You get treated much better when you're getting $25,000 than when you're getting nothing. Okay. And so just to know that. So just know you're doing this to give the speech and practice. And of course, you may get some coaching clients if that's what you want to do. But yeah, I love your idea. Now, we always did something like that if we were doing for whatever reason. Now, and I'll just tell you, I'm not a big believer in doing, talks for free when you should be paid. Mm-hmm. But there are times that it's appropriate. Okay. So for example, when it's not appropriate is when someone asks you to do a talk and says, well, we don't have a budget to pay you, but you'll get exposure. Okay. Run from that, because exposure plus, what is it? $3 now will get you a cup of coffee sometimes. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if you're wanting to do it for positioning purposes, because you recognize that there are people there that you want seeing you, whether or not they say they have a budget isn't the thing. They have a budget for that which they want, but they may already have chosen their speaker. Who knows what happened? But here's my thought about that. If you're going to speak for free, you do it out of strength, not out of weakness. Okay. So in other words, if you feel there's a legitimate reason for you to do it for free, but then I would always do what you suggested. You write it up. You let them know that it would normally be whatever it is, 5,000 or 10,000, whatever it is you're getting. And then you absolutely itemize it and then say, fee waived, blah, 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 blah. But you also remember there are things you can ask for, such as if they are videoing it for the footage. It might be their list of people. It might be if that particular group has a product or service that you'd be interested in, maybe they'll do some sort of exchange. So we always want to be very careful when it comes to doing anything for free that you should be paid for.
Yeah. Such good wisdom. Okay, I know by this time in the SpeakPact show that the audience is going to want to know, how do they find Bob Burg? Not hard, but where do you like to be found?
Yeah, it really isn't difficult. It's Burg, BURG.com. That's another benefit of
wow, you're an OG if you got Burg.com.
Well, the funny thing about that is this was back in the 90s before anything. And I'm not a technical guy at all. Technology is really not my thing. So, but what happened was a couple of guys who had built a business, an online business, back before that was cool, right? They had called me because they had used, and they had told me that they had used endless referrals to build their technology business. Of course, I didn't know anything about technology. So I said, well, how would that help you? Whatever. And they said, because the principles you taught, how to develop those know, like, trust relationships. Blah, blah. They said, so we're calling because we want to do something for you in return. And I said, what? And they said, we're going to right now help you get something called Burg.com. And what I said to them was, why would I need something
want
called
that?
Burg.com? And they said, just trust us on this one. And they helped me get nothing at it for a few years. And then all of a sudden, boy, was I really glad these two guys called me. And they turned out to be great guys.
Yeah, if only we knew in the 90s. So true. I love that. Okay, Bob, you know my signature question at the end of the SpeakPact show, and that is really to solidify that we are on a collective pact to make the greatest and broadest impact with the power of our voices as possible. So what would you today tell the Bob Burg of 30 years ago that might have made this process go a little bit faster, a little bit different? You had an incredible career. What are some of those tactical strategies that you kind of wish you knew back then?
I think it's just simply understanding that when we can, and this is really the premise of the Go-Giver, that when you can shift your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. Understand that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it is the most financially profitable way as well. Okay. Mm-hmm. And not for any kind of woo-woo, way out there, magical, mystical type of reasons. No, it's human nature. When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on the other person, on discovering their needs, their wants, their desires, understanding and helping them solve their problems, moving them closer to happiness, people feel good. They feel great about you. And they do because they want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. And just like I used to say to when I used to speak at sales conferences, and the first thing I'd say is nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, right? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, you have a sales goal, or because you're a nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. As a speaker, what you've got to realize is no one's hiring a speaker. What they're hiring is somebody with the wisdom to help move them or their organization from where they are now to where they want to be. So by suggestion, I'm sure you teach this very same thing, and that is don't make it about you. It's all about them. And to the degree that we recognize and embrace that, that's the degree that we can have a very successful speaking career.
Key. Go out. I'm assuming you're on Amazon. Get the Go-Giver book series, right? Join the community. But this is completely key. It overcomes so many otherwise obstacles for speakers. You can't have the jitters when you're there for other people. You only have the jitters when you're thinking, is it my hair in place? Like you're thinking about yourself. But when you're really there authentically for the audience, it does give back, even if you're doing it without that in mind. That giving piece, you can't outgive goodness, right? There's just it perpetuates. It's good for your career. It's also good for your level of impact. And I love that you've really kind of encapsulated that in a way that high performers can grab onto and have some tactical strategies.
Thank you, Antonia. You're wonderful. You're a fantastic host, and I just appreciate everything you do.
Well, ditto you. Thank you for giving us that beautiful, unrenewable resource, life resource of your time. I know how valuable it is, and we really do appreciate all of the wisdom that you've shared with the SpeakPact family. And for the SpeakPact family, go ahead and give both Bob and me some flowers today, and that go-give spirit, right? If you if you gleaned some insights and some value out of this, then chances are you know plenty of others who will do the same. So post it forward, and that really makes all of this work worth it. And it comes back around, right? Right, Bob?
Absolutely.
Right. Ciao, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the SpeakPact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the SpeakPact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply hashtag SpeakPact.